Being a leader is not necessarily a position or money. Being a leader is being there for your people. Being a leader is accountability, transparency, and again, knowing where your resilience ends and when your vulnerability begins, and being graceful about it.
There is rarely a life untouched by hardship or challenge. On this podcast, we invite our guests to share their very personal stories. We harness the wisdom and resilience of our guests, which has shaped who they are today.
Carl Rogers said, "That which is most personal is in fact most universal." Together we'll be inspired to embrace the resilience in our own stories and to gain strength in the face of adversity and have a few laughs along the way.
Hi, I'm Donna.
And I'm Di. We are the Double Ds and welcome to the Discovery Diaries.
We acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which we are recording this podcast. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and acknowledge their spiritual connection to family and storytelling.
Both Donna and Di were born here on these lands. We are grateful to draw on the culture of telling and sharing stories, and we hope that you will draw inspiration from the stories that are shared here.
Today's episode is with Henrietta Podgorska. Henrietta is an amazing woman and she has recently stepped into the CEO role at Umbrella Multicultural Community Care Services, which marks a significant milestone in her career dedicated to serving the community. So we talk about that at some length today in the podcast. With over 9 years of experience in the aged care sector, Henrietta has built a notable expertise in fostering engagement and improving accessibility within culturally and linguistically diverse and LGBTIQ plus communities. Her journey includes impactful work in both government and not-for-profit sectors, where she's been instrumental in enhancing service delivery and support for vulnerable populations. So that's Henrietta's bio, but today we also talk a lot about her personal journey from Hungary to Australia and then across the country, and her personal journey to recently become a CEO. It's an inspiring journey, a lot about leadership and what it means to be a leader, and we really hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did recording it. Henrietta, it's fantastic to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So I met Henrietta at a Leadership WA, which is a leadership program in Western Australia. I met Henrietta at a sort of a seminar, an early morning seminar, and we got talking and I thought, gosh, Henrietta would be fantastic to have on the podcast. So, and you were very open to it. So thank you for coming.
Thank you again. Thank you.
So I know you're from Hungary and you immigrated to Australia. Should we start from there and just talk about how that happened and how you found that? I know you said that was a very formative experience for you.
100%. And, as now I'm, approaching my 40s, looking back of what I have done when I was, late teens as well as early 20s. So I came here when I was 20 years old. I will not do it. Truly, young people rule the world. So what was happening for me, I had a love, and then the love told me about Australia. He wanted to come here, but then it broke up. And the only thing that remained from that obsession, I would say, because I would say love in your late 20s is mostly obsession, really. It's not fine-tuned yet, I feel like. So he inspired me to look into Australia, and I decided I want to give a go. Now, in Hungary is an interesting place in regards to education, because when it comes to uni, in order to get a degree, you have to have a language. So you have to have an official language test done and you have to pass. So I was not interested as much in German, which was my other tongue. So I'm actually used to be able to speak German much better. I wanted to do English because I felt like that was the language that we're heading to. American influence in Europe was huge at that time. So I said, okay, let's go to an English-speaking country, and looked at England, extremely expensive and too close for me. I really wanted to go out and explore the world. To be frank, my mom said it even when I was 3 to 4. She knew that I'm going to leave the country. I was just one of those people, just go and explore. So I picked Australia and I came here to study Interesting that we're talking about it today, because I was just at a migration conference and they talked about how the immigration system is changing and now they're cracking down on dodgy providers. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, but I came through one of those dodgy providers because I didn't know any better. I trusted a lawyer, immigration lawyer or agent to, give me a good education. I choose deliberately actually accounting and English. So I come back with something, not just language, but as well as something that I can use in my studies in Hungary. And I walked into that place and I knew this is not it. So luckily I had the English capacity and capacity in general to look up universities. At that time, I landed in Melbourne, with $700 in my pocket, a luggage, and the phone number to somebody. So again, being young and adventurous, I will definitely not do this now. So we went, I went there and I realized that this is not it. I knew that something was off with those education system, but, that was the entry for me. And then luckily I was able to find a university, Victoria University, by myself and arrange my own application and so forth and change the visa. I was just very lucky with that situation.
Just to understand, did you have aspects that weren't dodgy of that, or was the whole thing dodgy?
It was the whole thing dodgy. I came from Europe and I already done some studies in university and something was off for me. Even if I didn't know much about Australia and the whole experience was quite new, and obviously you have cultural shock when you come here. But I knew something was not okay. And it was a lot of, it was just didn't felt like a university or a college. It was in a office building. It was the whole thing experience was very weird. And, later on I learned about, some providers, the dodgy providers, are there just to, produce these courses so people can go through and study. And I don't judge my fellow international students. I was there too to work as well as to study. Everyone has different situations, right? And we shouldn't judge because international students provide a lot of workforce in Australia. But for me, who wanted to genuinely study, I knew that was not a good institution for that. So I went to Victoria University. But by that time, I realized that I love Australia. So I said, now I want to stay. I don't want to go back. That was a hard decision to tell my dad.
So how long had you been here before you realised you wanted to stay?
6 months. 6 months. I felt free. I felt like, I don't know, it was just, I felt my place. I found my community. And I have to acknowledge how important communities play in people's lives. Not even 1 week in, I had one phone number to this one Hungarian girl. Because of her, I was linked with the local Hungarian restaurant. So I got a job there, not even a week into that. Then because I didn't have any permanent place to stay, somebody offered their couch until I teamed up with this other girl who I had the phone number for, and we then rented a place together. It was a community effort to keep me here and to support me. And this is why I'm so passionate about empowering multicultural communities, because I know that often than not, they are the landing platforms. So a lot of our international students and people, and they provide so much support that is unacknowledged and informal. And I am one of the beneficiary of that. And I would not be here sitting with you today talking about my journey without acknowledging their contribution to support me in those initial days. But then once I find my feet, once I realized, hang on, something is off with this education facility, then I found Victoria University and started studying Diploma of Community Welfare Work because I wanted to give back to Australia. So the motivation was huge for me to do something good for the country that, adopted me in so many ways. And I fell in love. And that started a 6 years journey of studying and trying to find a way to stay in Australia.
And was the person that you met from Australia?
No, she was from Hungary. She came through the same immigration agent, which let's just say I fired very quickly because I felt like they were just there for the money. And I would like to acknowledge a lot of people coming here. And it's not just that. It was my own money. I partially earned that. So I was working since I was 14, selling books, going to markets. I was doing all sorts of entrepreneur stuff. So I had mostly my dad supported me too. So he bought the tickets, but I financially supported myself as well. But a lot of people come here with, a huge not burden, but the responsibility is that their education is paid by a village or a whole big family. So the scenarios that I found while I was talking to my fellow international students, and one good thing that I found with these dodgy providers per se is that I find a community of international students who were also a little bit of, outspaced of, am I at the right place? Am I doing the right thing? And it was a huge community of support. And even that other thing that I found very interesting is not even 2 weeks into my journey here, first time I met with racism. I'm not going to lie, I was very naive and young. I came from a very monolingual, monocultural country. We don't have too much diversity, if at all, in Hungary. And because of that, for me, having so many international students from all around the world was an incredible positive impact for me. So we were talking, not even 2 weeks in, we were talking about jobs. And, at that time, I finally got the Hungarian jobs. I was very happy. And they said, but don't worry, Henrietta, you will get jobs because you are tall, blonde, have blue eyes. And yes, and that was the first time I met with the real struggles of my fellow migrant communities. And I was so angry. I said, no, let me bring you, let me take you. And after the Hungarian restaurant, I actually got a job through another Hungarian, again, the community, at another cafe at the Melbourne Sport and Aquatic Centre. So MSEC, we used to call it. And I was very big on getting my fellow migrant students and people to come and work, because I know how much they wanted, and some of the barriers already, expressing some of those barriers that many, many migrants experiencing in regards to racism and discrimination.
I can hear already, Henrietta, having never met you before, just the passion that you have, and I'm sure that's built over the years, and we'd love to hear more about that. Can I just ask you you spoke a little bit about life in Hungary, but what was it like there in that era, that, the years just before you left?
It's a very different, very interesting question. Thank you for asking. So Hungary, I was born in the communism, but I never lived in communism. So I was 1986, 4 years. And then after that, the wall fell. Only memories that I have about that time is that my parents were very anxious. Despite the positive nature, I think a lot of people didn't know what happened. And the years after that was a country that was trying to find itself. And it was a lot of corruption, it was just a very interesting time. And I'm so glad feel so sorry for my parents' generation, because it must have been very difficult to navigate a free country from, but there's so many reminiscences there. And I think that's why, if you listen to any of the news where Hungary is right now, is that I think they never got over communism. It's still in their minds. When I started school, yes, it was not communism anymore, but the shade of the star was on the wall, because they just took it off, right? They never repainted because never had the money to repaint. It was I remember a very poor and under-resourced Hungary until we really entered the European Union and started finding its feet of who they are and what they are. And I would say Eastern Europe is still finding its way, and I think we are shifting a little bit there. But my experience, I had a good childhood. My parents divorced when I was 10, so that was one impact that I had on me. And I grew up with my dad, so it was not an easy one, but my dad has done the best he could at the time as a parent, and I was always a very independent child. And I have a beautiful little sister. She's amazing. She's even more fierce than I am. Can you believe? And I miss her daily. She is in Hungary, happy as Larry. So she's not going to move here.
Well, I was going to ask that, because there's, has there been a lot of drain of, people your age leaving?
Yes. But also I think people leaving the country, but then they can't find their own self. So I met with, and it's so interesting. I tried to advocate. I was the president of the Hungarian Association, which I'm happy to talk about it later, the first female and the youngest one. And I found, again, there, some of the women, especially from Hungary, they are a little bit lost. So they came here as caring or wives, and the husband gets the visa, but then they not learn the English because they don't have to, because they are backpacking the visa, and they get really isolated and usually take up menial jobs, cleaning, happening. Even in Melbourne, I've seen that one. It was very difficult to break out of that. And especially if something happens in the family, like domestic violence. Unfortunately, my community, at least what I have experienced, still believe the man, not the woman. So it's very difficult for supporting women who don't speak English well. They may have children or may not have children, but they just don't know where to go to because they don't have money and place to stay.
But they also literally don't have a voice because they don't speak English.
Yes. So there is domestic violence is something that I had come across, unfortunately, in my community. I know many other communities have that, and especially women, they're quite vulnerable still, migrant women. And it's not just now. The clients that I'm working with at Umbrella, at my job, they also, they worked really hard for their families, raised multiple children, moved to Australia with very little support, and they don't speak English well in the 80s, 90s, but how can they when they never had the opportunity, So migrant women are especially suffering at times. So I'm very passionate about giving them support and being there for them. Mm. So I was in Melbourne, finished my diploma. Then I didn't know what to do. So I graduated and then I got a job in remote regional Victoria, but unfortunately was not getting I just didn't have any other mean and my graduation visa was running out. So I said, okay, let's go up to Brisbane, try there. Again, unlucky, I was there for 8 months. And then all of a sudden, I got a message through Skill Select, which was at the time a government program, immigration program. And it said that Western Australia wants you as a social worker, welfare worker, but you have 28 days to find a full-time position in Perth for a year.
No pressure.
No pressure. Now, again, I am one of those people that love to build community around herself. Always was, always will be. I really think life is too short to do things alone. And I love my village. Doesn't matter where I go. So at that time when I was working at a community housing initiative, so we were housing asylum seekers and refugees, also gave me so many insights about life, including how lucky I am that if I have to leave this country, because at that time I didn't have permanent residency, I just go back to Hungary. Nobody's going to wait for me at the airport with a gun to my hand or the threat of, prison. So that gave me a really good, look at
perspective.
Perspective on life. When got that message to go to Perth, I came here and they helped me, my team and my colleagues at the time, they spent their lunch break sending out 200 resumes to anything and everybody here in Perth. Yeah. So I got 3 interviews booked. One of them didn't eventuate because as it turned out, Albany is not a suburb in Perth. That's okay. That was one of my colleagues. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to
You've got to love them for trying.
I know. Look, they just went WA and just sent it out. So, and to be hindsight, I've been in Albany a couple of times now and I would love to live there, but at that time didn't. So I had an interview for a job for mental health because I did have some mental health experience, mental health officer, welfare officer, and the other one was with Carers WA. And very luckily I got Carers. I actually got both jobs, but Carers WA had a better offer. So I was able to choose, which was incredible for me by the end. So because of Carers WA, I was able to get my permanent residency, moved to Perth. Then 2 years later, I found Umbrella. Originally, I actually was studying at Curtin because I wanted to become a nurse, but then Umbrella sort of, captured me completely. So by semester 2, I quit studying and went full-time in Umbrella. I think I find my tribe, I find my community, and 9 years later, being the CEO of the organization, it's a huge, honor, and absolutely love it. So
for those who've never heard of Umbrella, they don't understand what that even means or stands for. Tell us a bit about the organisation.
So Umbrella is 24 years old, and I absolutely love this story because, again, it's about that community spirit. So 24 years ago, under the leadership of Anna Harrison, people came together and said, look, we have an aging community, and we know that a lot of those people are refugees of wars and dictatorship. So they're aging faster. We need something for us. us. And they also knew that it's not cleaning or gardening that's going to keep people at home, but the social connection, the community, and, building that support around the people. So they came up with the idea of Umbrella and Umbrella Friends, where they started providing social groups and activities for seniors. And initially, Anna Harrison went to the department and said, look, give me $100,000 to try this. So they gave her $100,000 non-recurrent funding. And by 2004, it was an incorporated association with 27 different cultures, and it just grew from there. So Umbrella today provides home care in the community. So it's aged care, but only for people who live still at home. We have low-level and high-level care, so we can do just a little bit of cleaning or domestic or shopping. And obviously, we have a huge social support group, one of the biggest one in town, with over 22 vehicles, moving 400 to 500 people a week. Lots of different events, of course, a lot of food and music, because that's what we love.
That's the glue, isn't it?
Yeah,
that
that's the
holds
glue.
Everybody together.
Yeah, but we also still have that spirit of our founders that it's giving back. So we do a lot of projects in the community to, first of all, to get to translate some of the government lingo and culture, because I think that's what's really missing. The government doing a really great work up here, but it's just filtering down to those communities who disengaged or unable to understand because of language and cultural differences. You need sometimes that in-between people, and Umbrella often than not is that organization and the projects we are doing. So we are doing a lot of that outreach and community-based development to make sure that our community voices are heard, especially when it comes to policy development and community education. So we are trying to do a lot of those projects to link with, policymakers, with the communities, and we are just holding the bridge in between to making sure that, moving forward, we have better policies and better services for those that we are serving.
Today's episode is brought to you by Impact Society. Impact Society is a company focused on helping everyday managers become world-changing leaders. They provide straightforward and stylish tools, training and content to elevate leadership skills and mindsets, and to help leaders thrive in work and in life. Impact Society has a new product that's just coming out, which is called Random Acts of Leadership, and it's a pack of cards, like a pack of playing cards, and on each of the 52 cards is a different little act of leadership to do every day. So the hope with these cards is to inspire small daily acts of leadership with big impact. So each card has a leadership action to do, and then watch the positive ripple effects with your team. And they foster a culture of trust, of openness and growth. The reason I really like these cards is they're something a little bit different. They're fun, they're easy, and they've got small actionable things to do every day. And they make fantastic gifts for the office as well. So for listeners of the Double D's podcast, there's a 20% discount on these leadership cards. You just need to go to impactsociety.co, and when you order the leadership cards, put in a discount code which is Double D's, so DOUBLEDS, and then you'll get your 20% discount. And then when you receive the cards, let us know on Instagram in a message at Double D's Discovery Diaries on Instagram. Let us know any impacts and fun stories that you have with using these cards, and we look forward to you enjoying them and letting us know how they've positively impacted you. And how have you found the transition to be the CEO? Because you've been doing it for about 6 months now, isn't it?
6 months
That
now.
was a very big sigh.
Six months. I've done 6 months. Technically, my probation is coming up, so which I'm looking forward to. And I'm not going to lie, I think I was a little bit shell-shocked for the first 4 months. Like, I was working very closely with the CEO for the last 9 years. And just a little bit of side note, I did left Umbrella for 5 months to work at the Department of Home Affairs as assistant director, which was an incredible, great experience, and big shout out to that amazing team. But then I was brought back, and I was the operation manager. So first in depth, and I felt like I'm doing really well. And then I got the gig because obviously I know Umbrella for the last 9 years. And that's what I said to the board on my interview. I know the organization, I know our clients, our staff, our volunteers, our programs, the industry, and I'm a huge advocate around everything that Umbrella does. And but I'm a new CEO. And the board very graciously took on the challenge of mentoring. So they didn't let me. I have to acknowledge Marika, who was a previous president, and also Anna Harrison, who is a current president. They're extremely supportive, and the whole board. They were very, very supportive. And, if you're a board out there listening, please support your CEO. It's very incredibly important, especially when they're new. Despite me knowing the organization, I would say I was shell-shocked the first 4 months. And I think I'm just getting up and able to normalize things. Umbrella had a challenging 12 months. It's a lot of leadership change. So there was still a lot of that dealing. There was a lot of trust lost. Sometimes I felt like there was trust missing from support workers or from our staff. So building that one up, being there, seeing me, the client seeing me as well. So I try to do a lot of visibility work, going out there, being there, and also listening. So
they sound like two really important places to start, though, visibility and listening.
Yes.
Don't underestimate how much trust that builds.
100%. And I was very reflecting back on the Leadership WA course as well, because we had the opportunity to meet with CEOs. And the first person mentioned what they have done as when they first got the gig, right? And after that, I asked every CEO that came, so what was your first thing when and one of them was finance. I have to make sure that we have good with the books. The other one was legalities. And I was always wondered where I'm going to land. So I know I was compliant. And it's like, I can't grow the organization. I need to stabilize the organization. And until we have full compliance, which Umbrella is really good at, it was just making sure that everybody is on board. And obviously with the Changing Aged Care Act is just one of those times where compliance is constantly changing and moving. So for me, that was, we are compliant. All good. Now we look at finances, not so good. But again, it's just because of the changing industry and the massive increases in fees, and still trying to find our way to make sure that the service is accessible, quality as well as affordable for our clients. So still managing. So it was compliance and a little bit of finance for me when I first landed, and HR. It is one of the biggest part of my work until today. And shout out to my amazing HR manager. I don't know what I would do without her. She's really, really great, and her team. And I think it's really important to make sure that, again, you have your tribe, that you have your right managers in the right place. And I am very happy to say that I have a really great team, and everybody, I can trust them. And when they have any issues, we can work it through. So I'm trying to maintain a quite open door policy, which Anna had. So I learned it from her, but as well as no blame or not, who comes first to the door is the right person. I love to listen to all sides at all times and not making judgment, and just trying to be. So
many things in there about leadership in general, yes. But also, how you're starting to apply the things that work in community and how that then applies to leadership and team, which is really building your community of trusted people around you and saying, I trust you, I've got your back. We're not going to get everything right,
Yeah. And also capacity building, in yourself and your team as well. And they're willing to come along the journey. And I think it's just ongoing conversation with those people that I have in my team of where they want to go and how they want to see. And having that transparency and accountability is just so important. But it's a journey. You don't necessarily get there, or you're not necessarily earning that trust, even if. And I remember our first key management meeting, I done this big speech, but I told them, look, all in all, Henny, but you don't know Henrietta as the CEO. Please give me time and space. And it is going to be change management. Doesn't matter who sits on this chair, because I'm still learning who I am as the CEO. And they were very graciously nodding, so that was good. But I think it was good to preemptively tell these things. Like when I do presentation, I like to say that I have an accent and I have, moving my hands as a good European. I like to use my hands when I talk. And unfortunately, people can't see it right now, but I do use.
We could take a little video, couldn't we, Donna, of all the hand movements?
All the hand movements. So I like to say that, because then it takes off people's minds of those issues. Because, that's why she sounds interesting, or that's why, why she's using her hand so much. And I think preemptively telling my team please give me some time, and also please don't react. Why is Henny doing that? Well, it's Henrietta, the CEO, and I have a board that I have to report to, as well as at over 1,000 clients responsible for. So I need to manage different scenarios in a way that you may not have seen me before. So let's work this together. Let's work on this together.
What would you say you've learnt the most about yourself in the last 6 months, kind of taking on this new role? And
is that I actually slow down and able to, rationalize things more, like making decisions. I even with the board, and again, building my little tribe, I reached out to the CEOs, and again, I would like to acknowledge everybody said yes, let's catch up for a coffee. And it's a very different conversation once you are a CEO. So it's definitely not saying a club, but it is definitely something that was different to anything else I've done before. I've worked with a lot of CEOs in my previous positions, as well as the Department of Home Affairs, because we worked with some of the CEOs or presidents or chairs of the ethnic communities. But when you are one of that position, the conversation changes, becomes more strategic, but as well as finally feel like you're able to share some of those things, because it's a very lonely position, So you need to find your tribe and have that conversation, especially when you don't know who to tell. Because, it's a lonely position. You don't have a peer. You don't have another CEO.
And I think that's very wise so early to have recognised what will support you to sustain this as well, because most leaders, the higher they go, report higher levels of loneliness. It's a very common phenomena. You're not alone in that. But what I love about what you're doing is how you're resourcing yourself to actually be resilient around that, because you're finding the people and the supports already, and you know that they are different. I mean, Donna and I have talked about this a lot. It's sort of in our journeys about what I need for support now, today, is very different from what I might have needed 6 months ago or 6 years ago. And that ability to adapt and pivot with what we need is so important.
Well, I think it was always in me a little bit, like when I became the president of the Hungarian Association in 2018. Although they said they're going to support me, again, very different experience. It was not what I thought. And again, I was young and inexperienced. It's just, unfortunately, some of our communities, like the Hungarian, aging really, really well. So when they saw a competent woman who really wanted to do good by the community, I wanted to give back, because Hungarian community gave me so much in Melbourne. So I took on that, and like 3 months in, I realized that, oh my God, what is this? So I reached out to all the presidents in Perth Metro, all the other ethnic community presidents, and 44 of them showed up. And that was an incredible conversation at the German
That was
club.
not 4, that's 44.
44 presidents from Korea, Poland, Germany, all the Scandinavian countries, French, Swiss, name it, Italian.
I know a friend of mine went. She's from the Spanish.
Yes,
Spanish
Olaya.
couple,
Yes. Oh, yeah, she's amazing. They all responded. And I think because...
What does that tell you?
Tells me that everybody had the same itch. It's just nobody reached out to do something. And I mean, that was one of my experience of, I think it was just needed a flame. And I came in, and I'm one of those people. And again, Leadership WA was really great at showing that to me, that I have a really good hard leadership skills. It's because of my upbringing, if because the way I operate and trying to make sense of the world, I have those skills, right? So that skill is, I come into the door, I look around, where is the problem? Let's solve it, and ask questions. I love asking. People know that I have no issues with asking hard questions, because that's how we can get to the solutions. It's the soft skills that were missing. So at that time, reflecting back on, I wish I would nurture some of those connections. I was very happy that we reconnected with Olaya through Multilingual Australia, because she was very inspiring to me. But I think those were the soft skills, the networking skills that were missing at the time. So while a lot of people showed up and I learned a lot, it was just the other side of my leadership were not strong enough to hold it together. And I think after 2 or 3 meetings, it fall apart. So again, just learning of some of the things that I have done wrong and I wish I have done differently, as well as listening to my fellow presidents. I do think that there is a need of a informal or formal group for these presidents. They're doing God's work when it comes to multiculturalism in Perth. And until today, did not acknowledged in a way that I think they should be, for many reasons. Yeah.
I know we spoke off the podcast, but it would be really interesting to bring that in. And you said because you were kind of with your dad and your little sister from 10 years old, and that meant you had to become strong and make decisions on your own and things like that. And that's probably how you said that's how you got so good at leadership skills with the exact type of thing that you're talking about now. Decisiveness and coming in and solving things. And
yeah, but at the same time, I always, and this is an ongoing joke between me and my husband, who again, I just would like to acknowledge, he is an absolute legend and, rock of my life. But he always does it. Henny, every time you go into a room, they make you the leader. Stop it. And it's no joke. But again, it's just because I have such a strong, visible, strong leadership, not the soft one, but the opposite, the very visible, authoritative, okay, let's do this, let's bring it together, organizing things. And I'm really
take
good
control and get it all done.
Yes. But again, the soft skills were missing. And I didn't realize that until Leadership WA course where we actually sit down and had to write our story. That's one of the components. And I kid you not, I cried. Oh my God, because I always had to be strong. I had to get my own driving license. I had to look after my sister. I organized all my visa stuff or changed university, not even 6 months in, because, I had to do all of that. I always had to be strong. I never let myself to be vulnerable, never let myself to make mistakes. And this is where I feel like resilience sometimes overdone, and I've definitely overdone resilience, where I actually should have been learned how to be non-resilient and ask for help and learn from others and others' mistakes, as well as acknowledging my own and be comfortable in that place, because you only can grow if you make mistakes, because otherwise you're not doing life. We will make mistakes. Doesn't matter which path you take. And looking back at that and say, I wish all that resilience I had and inbuilt in me was maybe a little bit too strong for a 20 years old. But then again, I would not sit here. I would not have my amazing husband and child and my beautiful work and colleagues and family. So, in hindsight, I guess I would do everything the same way. But maybe
I love that reframe, because you started the conversation going, I would not do that again.
Yeah,
it's oh no, maybe I would actually, because
I would. Yeah. I would not do it right now. So if I would have to pack up and leave to another country, that was $750 in the luggage in my hand. I was like crazy girl, but good kudos for her, because she did. And again, because of that resilience that I had to learn very early in life. But again, if somebody's listening and wanted to be that leader, just make sure that you tune down your resilience to a level where you enable yourself to learn and not to be afraid of falling and making mistakes. I would not be sitting in this chair as the CEO of an amazing organization if I would not have made mistakes. And every mistake took me one step closer to where I am today. So again, just mitigating that of how comfortable you want to be, as well as acknowledging others' resilience, as well as when they fall, you are there to help them to come up. And that's the real soft leadership that I have learned since Leadership WA, since I've done the Leadership WA course.
When did you do the Leadership WA course, Henrietta?
Oh, I hope they're not going to quote me on that. 2021, if I remember correctly. Yes, I looked it up and then I forgot it again. 2021, and because I had, I think, a 2 years old on my hand and I couldn't go to 2021. Yes, yeah.
It sounded like that was a real landmark program for you.
Yes. And I'm very grateful that I was able to do that. And I hope they continue to get the funding. Again, when it comes to leadership courses, I think we have so many, and especially for multicultural communities. And it's really, really good for self-esteem. And I want our communities to do that, because I think we need that resilience and self-esteem in our communities, that they're able to lead. But sometimes it just doesn't translate down to the communities. So again, Leadership WA the course was great because it was a mix. I learned from government, I learned from non-for-profit and for-profit, and we were able to really bounce off ideas. And like, well, I would never do that in non-for-profit, I learned a lot. So, yeah.
I think that realisation of everyone fails, and if you never fail, it's because you've never made a decision or you've never done something scary. That's just such an important learning in life.
Yeah, 100%. And it's scary. I also CEO every single day. I go in there and I'm like, not intention. I don't want to fail. Okay. But then if I do, what are the consequences? Because I don't feel like I have done, and like so far so good, touch wood. So far so good. But I know that in one stage I may make a decision that will have other consequences. So the enormity of those decisions, I just cannot underestimate how does it feel like sitting there and making a decision that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to the organization or somebody's mental health or a client's, well-being. And all of those decisions are not an easy one to make when you are in that moment. And what I found is the gut at the time, trusting your instinct, trusting your knowledge, and also a little bit of gut feeling. Not if you have only gut feeling, that's not a good thing, but because you need to have that experience, you need to have that, again, the leadership courses that I have done and all the other leadership positions that I have been, including the one with Department of Home Affairs, where I learned other important skills, and especially operation-wise, because it's a huge operation, multi-story operation.
This episode is brought to you by my coaching program about navigating a lifequake. If you've experienced a lifequake, which is a traumatic life event that you are struggling to cope with, then this 9-week coaching program is for you. This is based on a very traumatic workplace-related incident that I had in November 2021, where I was absolutely struggling to cope. Over the months that followed, I documented everything I did to recover, and I've incorporated it into a framework, which is the Stronger Framework. So the program is Navigating a Lifequake, and it's amongst a supportive community, a transformational 9-week coaching program, which includes weekly virtual coaching sessions and lots of other materials. So if you are interested and you can relate to this, for listeners of the Double D's podcast, there's a 20% discount. Go to my personal website, www.donnasbalconyviews.com.au. You can find out more information about this transformational coaching program. And if you put in double D, so double DS as one word, you can get a 20% discount on the 9-week coaching program.
So what are some of your hopes for the future, for your community particularly?
Look, we are at an interesting moment because we have a new Aged Care Act coming, and we're already preparing some feedback on that. One of my biggest heartache is, despite over 10 years of very hard advocacy, and not just by me or Anna Harrison or Umbrella or Chunghwa or MSCWA. And if somebody doesn't know, these are the organizations very heavily involved with multicultural communities and their aging members. And not just them, but there's a lot of other advocates from all around the country advocated for better treatment and better services for multicultural communities. And the Aged Care Act has nothing. So what my hope is that we need to learn with maybe advocating upwards is not working. Maybe it's the building our own village, because yes, you need a village to raise a child, but you also need a village to look after your elders. And that's what I'm going to focus on. Enable communities, giving them the right tool, the right information, so they can make the right decision about their care needs. And with my team, we will continue to do that, as well as provide that care. So we want to be part of the solution, and we want to be part of that dialogue of how we want to look after our elders. Umbrella was delivering person-centered care before the new Aged Care Act. We didn't need a new Aged Care Act, although I do think that it's really great that now finally we said they're saying the right thing about how important it is to have the client's rights first. But a lot of organizations didn't need it that I know and I work with. So we continue to do the work that we have been doing. Working with families. So my volunteer work with Multilingual Australia, I really love doing that.
When on earth do you get time to do that? Just give us a snapshot of where that fits into your life.
Look, actually, the funny thing is that very unfortunately, 3 years ago, I hooked on TikTok. And when I say you can scroll for hours on end on that phone, so I have now set up a 1.5 hour warning on my phone. And I realized I have 1.5 hour, to be on TikTok, or 2 hours on TikTok. My screen time on my phone is 5 hours per day. That's what it says, right? That's quite a lot. Mind you, I also listen over 13 books and read over 13 books a month. So I'm a very avid reader as well. So if you have that time, and again, it's just exchanging. Everybody has the same amount of hours, but not everybody has the same amount of energy, same amount of opportunities. I have an incredibly supportive husband, Philip Podgorski. I love you very much. And
shout out to Philip.
He is the one really enables me. And I still, with my son, going out and scooting with him or doing fun stuff.
So take us back. You realise there's an hour and a half of scrolling on TikTok.
Yep.
And so then was the next thought, how could I use that hour and a half differently?
Yeah, and volunteer. Please volunteer. It's incredibly important cohesion tool in Australia. But again, one of the other things, and I'm very passionate about, the more I get involved with, the more questions I ask. That's just me. So for me, volunteering is a very interesting question here in Australia, because a lot of the volunteering that we do is coming from a Anglo-Saxon monocultural, monolingual understanding. So when the communities arrive here, especially, communities that they're coming from a country where volunteering doesn't exist or only exists as a religious act, they come here and all of a sudden you can volunteer to do literally anything, to do podcasts, to be a chef, to be support people in their homes. It's just incredible amount of volunteering opportunities out there, right? So it's really hard to translate, because when you tell them what you're doing, and one of the issues I had with the Hungarian association that been around for the last 70 years and purely run by volunteers. And I mean, some of them were born in that house. Like it's incredible. I wanted to bring in, as when I was the president, some policies, and volunteering WA is really great, or giving you free tools. Mm-hmm. And they said to me, no, I am not a volunteer. I'm the member of this community and I'm not volunteering here. I'm giving, this is my community. And this is when I realized that a lot of the volunteering that we do is not acknowledged. So again, for me, when I realized that I had that 1.5 hour, I wanted to do something good. And I had a little one on my arm who I was just told by a community nurse at the time to only speak to him in English. And I was like, well, excuse me. No. And
says who?
Yeah. Community nurse. And trust me, my story is quite mild compared to what I'm hearing now when I'm working with the community. So obviously flared up passion. When I say you can't find like the mother tiger that came out of me because of that. And I was like, I need to do something. And then obviously...
My mother tiger's coming out vicariously on your behalf. I
know. So I wanted to do something. And that's when I ended up meeting with bilingual families. And then I got involved. At the time, it used to be called Bilingual Families. And I got involved with them. So
I'm really interested in something you said, which I think I heard you right, which is I'm not a volunteer.
Yeah.
I'm a member of my community.
Yes.
That feels really important.
Yes, and we're not exploring that question deeper. And that's one of my passion, and I'm hoping to do some projects with Umbrella as well, because for us it's important. We have a huge bilingual workforce, but some communities don't respond at all. And that's an issue, because we have elders in the community in residential care that need somebody who speak that language to go and visit them. And some communities are great, like you give a call to, and I'm not going to name any, but...
Well, you've got a great example from your own experience, which is 200 CVs go out when I reach out to my community.
Exactly, and that was all done by volunteering. And these are the moments when you don't realize the work that you do. So, often than not, I don't even realize I'm doing the volunteering, because it's just part of the passion. And I think that's really important, that you find something that you love to do when it comes to volunteering, because you're not going to get paid. Your payment is here. and in your heart, and you're feeling good and seeing other people do better. I think that's the biggest payment you can get from any volunteering. So.
But I also heard it almost like it was an affront to be called a volunteer. It was
at that time, trust me, I'm not saying they nearly took off my head, but it was very vehemently against it. And the only thing I could get out of them is to, after 70 years, to finally celebrate our volunteers with a night during my volunteer week. And that was a huge achievement because they have never done it before. And a lot of the communities are like that. So if they're not recognized or not acknowledge that volunteering is, and they think it's just handing out food for the homeless, which is again, that religious connotation coming from their country, they miss out on so much great opportunities to do good in the community and grow the amazing communities that we have. So that's why I'm very passionate about volunteering too, because they are the true leaders and heroes of our community.
And also, I guess unless we acknowledge them, we don't also see the value that unseen, unhidden work actually brings to our society.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, multiculturalism, the one that we enjoy and celebrate today, will not exist without volunteering. That's a fact. And again, there's a lot of reports or discussion happening that multicultural new migrants have a lot of, barriers to volunteering. I vehemently disagree. I don't know any migrant in my life who did not volunteer at least 5 minutes of their time, because when you arrive to your community, we very naturally find each other. Because they want to hear, they want to know what's happening. They want the food. It's very natural that people come to one of the groups anyway, and they get grabbed and put into the kitchen to clean or cook or do stuff, and it's just such a natural occurrence, and that's what makes keeps Australia multicultural. All those events that you see, the communities that you see, all of them are sharing their culture and language voluntarily. And again, it's not an easy one, and until today, not really well funded or supported. This is why I'm very keen on having better support for multicultural communities, specifically when it comes to their volunteer leadership. So in last National Volunteer Week, we actually had an event where I had 5 leaders in the room who were leaders of their communities voluntarily, and ask them the hard questions. What's the worst part? What's the hard part? And we have a report on our website at Umbrella, so please visit. And it was incredible to hear that, yes, it's about organizing, it's about finding the time, it's about feeling supported, and all the frustration that come out of you are a volunteer and they are the volunteer and they want you to lead, but then you want them to do stuff. And, where is that ends and how you navigate that. Other aspects of leadership when you're actually not getting paid to be a leader. You are just there because they choose you, because for so many reasons people get chosen for those roles, but then they have no support. And again, when I first became the president and I felt unsupported or felt like I'm not getting the right answers, I called them 44 presidents and they all answered. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a need there for further support.
Mm. Well, it's been absolutely fantastic having you, Henrietta, and it's very inspiring, I think, especially for younger people and people from multicultural societies, different groups, to hear your story, to hear about how you arrived with nearly, very small amount of stuff so long ago, and everything that you've done and so much contribution to the community. And is there any last words you'd like to say to people, to us or to people listening?
Being a leader is not necessarily a position or money. Being a leader is being there for your people. Being a leader is accountability, transparency, and again, knowing where your resilience ends and when your vulnerability begins, and being graceful about it. You don't become a leader overnight. I truly feel like I'm still developing. I think I have much better leadership skills than what I had 5 or even 10 years ago. But I had an incredible luck with the mentors in my life. Anna Harrison, the founder of Umbrella, was definitely one of them. A lot of the Hungarian community members who supported my presidency. Raquel or Olaya from Multilingual Australia, or Vivian or any other members of that group who's supporting me and my crazy runaround and advocacy. And yeah, you can't be a leader without team. So just make sure you look after them, because that's very, very important.
Well, we loved having you on. Thank you so much
you.
for sharing your story, or a piece of your story, and we wish you all the best for your leadership journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been great, Henrietta, and we'll have in our show notes how you can contact you and Umbrella and everything else. So thank you so much. It's been very inspiring.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed this episode today, please share it with people you know who you think will benefit and enjoy it. Also, please follow us so you'll be alerted when we release our next podcast. And please give us a positive review.
So, Donna, there was so much in that podcast. There were so many threads, and Henrietta brought so many things that I wanted to kind of follow. But then at the end, she told us a story about how her first few months of being a CEO were actually really relatable, those first few months of parenthood. So we ended up taking a video of her describing that, and we're going to share that on our socials because it's such a great analogy.
Yeah, and it's probably not one that every CEO has, and she described it beautifully afterwards about the similarities of being so happy and yet so scared as well.
It was like she was really willing to share and feel all the big emotions, and also share that with her team. So she talks a lot on this podcast about vulnerability and how her journey towards more vulnerability is really serving her well.
Absolutely. So look out for her analogy about her having her baby.